Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining iNACOL's January Teacher Talk webinar. My name is Natalie Abel, and I'm the Strategic Partnerships Director here at iNACOL, tuning in from Richmond, Virginia today. We're so grateful to have all of you join us. So my clock says 6 p.m. Eastern, so we will go ahead and get started as some more folks continue to trickle in today. So before I turn it over to our two wonderful presenters today, I have just a few quick housekeeping items to go through. I won't take too much of your time today, but in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, I'd like to point out the chat box that some of you have already found. And if you haven't done so already, I encourage you to please introduce yourself. We'd really love to know a little bit more about who you are and the work that you do and what you're hoping to get out of today's webinar. And we really do encourage folks to share their own insights and experiences through the chat box as we go throughout the webinar as well. We'd love to learn from you just as much as we'd love to learn from our presenters today. So I encourage you to have your own conversations and share your own strategies and what works for you as well. We also encourage you to ask a lot of questions in the chat box. We will pause throughout the webinar to address any questions that might have come in, and we'll also save some time at the end to address any that we might not have gotten to yet. So ask a lot of questions, and we also, if you are a fan of social media, encourage you to share what you're learning there too. So Ashley just dropped some Twitter hashtags and handles in the chat box, so feel free to tag us and our presenters and use hashtag #PLearnChat if you would like to share anything there as well. Today's webinar will be recorded and archived on inacol.org, and we will send you all an email after today's webinar that'll have a link to this full recording today, and you'll also be able to download the slides. So you'll have access to any of the conversations we have today, or you'll be able to refer back to any of the content that's on these slides. And those are free and open for you to share with any other colleagues and peers who might be interested in this information as well. Lastly, if you have audio issues at any point throughout the webinar, please feel free to flag that for me in the chat box, and I can do my best to help navigate any technical issues that we run into. So I'll do my best to solve any audio issues and try to optimize your listening experience here with us tonight. So with that, I am grateful to have Rochelle Dean-Foss and Rodney Turner here with us this evening, talking about different ways that teachers are developing and designing really powerful, personalized, and productive learning experiences for their students. So with that, I won't take up any more of your time this evening. Rochelle, I'd be happy to now turn it over to you. If you want to go ahead and click your talk button, it's all you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Excited to present this webinar tonight with my good friend Rodney, and the focus is on the powerful, personalized, productive learning tools that, can you hear me? Okay, on the tools that you can use in the classroom. Okay, good. And it's not always about the technology, and so while we will be talking about these different tools that we've used and that we've had students use in our classrooms, it's about more than that, and you'll see through some of the images in this presentation and hear some of the stories about how changed the classroom has become, moving some things out of the way and using different tools that tend to give students more of a choice in what they're learning, and it really opens up a lot of opportunities for them and for the educators as well, because as much as we're sharing our information with the students, we learn as much, if not more, from them sometimes, and they always come up with the greatest ideas. So a lot of what Rodney and I will be sharing is based on what the students have come up with and what they've brought back and shared with everybody else as well. So a little bit about us to get started. I am from near Pittsburgh. I have been a foreign language teacher. I've taught French and Spanish, at Riverview Junior Senior High School. This is my 21st year teaching there. Before that, I did some long-term substituting positions for about 3 years after I got my teaching degree. I also teach a STEAM course to students in the 8th grade, which is a course I'm really excited about because whenever I was in 8th grade myself, long ago, the Apple computers started to make their way into the classroom. And so from that point in the early 80s until now, I've just been really excited about the possibilities with technology. So the course I'm teaching to my 8th graders now involves a lot of different things like coding, game-based learning, definitely teaching them about being responsible digital citizens, creating with technology. So it's a lot of fun to work with them at that level, but also in my other Spanish classes as well to see what the students come up with and create to make it more authentic for them to learn and a lot more of an engaging environment. So that's a little bit about me, and the picture that's shown on the screen is a few of my students who for the last 3 years have gone to different educational technology showcases to share the work that they've been doing in Spanish class but also in their other classes, and they talk about their favorite technology tools and how they help them to learn even better and in different ways. So now on to Rodney.
Hi folks, Rodney Turner here. I'm coming to you from Phoenix, Arizona. Yes, no more talk about weather. That's all I'm going to say. We have, I've been an educator for the last 17 years. Currently I am a Verizon Innovative Learning Schools Technology Coach. And the picture that you see there is actually with one of my Verizon t-shirt on, and I was in a classroom just before our winter break. Now, the ironic part about this is that I teach in a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade school, also called a middle school here in Arizona, but that classroom is a 1st grade classroom. What I was doing was I was actually taking some of the robots and some of the ideas of coding and taking it to that classroom in a different district and testing out the ideas that I had that I was going to bring to my, my school. So that picture is kind of deceiving, but still, you know, taking a part of my vacation time and showing little ones about coding is what I love to do. I have taught in 3 different districts, but mainly my focus has been a lot about technology and leveraging the technology that we have in our schools, in whatever school that I'm working in. And one of the things that I've really fascinated about is just how much diversity that we have as far as tools are concerned, and also the diversity of the skill sets of all of our teachers that we have. So one of the things that I'm completely excited about is knowing that I have this opportunity to share about some tools, but as Rochelle said, it's not about the tools, but it's about what students have said about them and how it's a really great opportunity to share what they have learned within the class. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and begin. Here's what we hope that you'll learn and be able to do, is to learn a little bit more about how to engage your students in these tools. And we've got several more that we want to do, but also to get some additional ideas of how to create more personalized learning experiences for the students, and then also being able to empower students to take the lead. We want you to be able to be an integral part of this presentation, because you know one of the things that has been said, and that we also really firmly believe in, is that you are a part of this, and we all will be able to learn together. We are not the smartest people in this room, this virtual room. We are all together. So, to go ahead and get started, purposeful. In your planning, I think it's very important that we plan. I don't think anyone will disagree with me that we must plan for using our technology, and we have to leverage it in a way that it will help our students to be creators with choices. There are so many tools that are out there. There are so many different ways that students learn. There are so many different variations on those ways that we would be remiss to limit our possibilities and the students' possibilities to grow and to learn. Therefore, we have to develop a vital digital citizenship and technology skills. There has to be a wide band of what's there. The other thing that's also a really huge push and is really important is that we make sure that our classrooms should be student-driven as much as possible. As my principal loves to say, you know, 13-year-olds are not quite skillful enough to run a school, so there has to be some oversight on that. But as much as possible, provide our students an opportunity to be a part of the leading of the school, but also to be help drive the classroom and what goes on in there. But then also making sure that we empower students to have the right resources available to them. Those resources are critical, and we as teachers must make sure that we provide them with the best possible resources that are there. All right, Rochelle, your turn.
Okay, so the one slide that Rodney had started with had a picture of a classroom, which was a picture of my classroom up until probably, and he's going, let's see, there it is. And it was in rows. And for many years, I taught the way that I thought I had to teach, which was standing in front of the room, talking for the whole period, students lined up in their rows, in their places. And about a year ago this time, I really started to notice that the students weren't as engaged as what they had been in years prior. It seems like the interest was kind of like fading a little bit, and I was trying to figure out what could I do that was different. And it was hard if you had larger class sizes to make sure that everybody was paying attention. So I did spend some time looking at student engagement. I did some research and some reading, and a lot of what I was hearing was about giving students more choices in the classroom. And so I tried to give them some opportunities to do things that typically the teachers would do in the classroom. So one of the first things that I did was I opened up opportunities for some of the students to create with some of the tools that I had been creating with. And when I did that, it was like this amazing thing happened. The students who maybe weren't as excited about using the technology were thrilled to be able to take that stand in the classroom. So in some of these pictures that you see, I mean, there's not one picture there where I'm in the picture, and it's the students that are teaching and working together and interacting. And so the one thing that I started with this year is I got rid of those rows, and I moved my desks into different sections, and I've been doing stations in my classroom. And what I found is that when the students have these choices and they can kind of take on the leadership role as opposed to just sitting and consuming, it makes a huge difference. And another added benefit to that is that it frees me up to move around the classroom. And so maybe in last year at this time, I might not have had an opportunity to speak and interact with each student more than a few times per week. But now the way that the classroom is set up, I can move around and interact with each group, with each student, and it's really going a lot better this year. So I really had to, I got out of the way, and it was uncomfortable at first because you're so used to perhaps being in the front of the room feeling like you have to stay there. And this past summer I thought about a lot of things, and I thought, well, I don't necessarily have to be in the room because the students need those opportunities to speak and interact and connect. And I wanted to do more than just stand and talk at them. I wanted them to be involved as well. So I tried to spend less time talking in the classroom and moving around and watching them interact and teach each other. So that's what happened in this picture. But one of the first things in thinking about learning spaces, talking about the physical space versus the virtual space. So 2 years ago, I decided to try something different with my Spanish 1 class, and it was part of my graduate program for my master's in educational technology. And we had to create an asynchronous lesson, which I had never done as a teacher. I had done those as a student. And we had been using Edmodo, which is something I found a couple of years ago. The reason I found that was because I was noticing a disconnect with my students. They were coming to ask questions, or they had questions in the evening or on the weekends, or if they were absent, they couldn't find the papers. And it really bothered me that whenever they had those questions or needed those materials, that they couldn't get them because either I wasn't there or they didn't have access to the room in the space. So when I thought about this, I created this whole asynchronous lesson that I created on a Google site, and the students were kind of nervous about it at first because the concept of taking things outside of class and doing it on their own time was a little bit scary for them and a little bit scary for me as well. But I wanted to see what they could do when they had the opportunity to kind of learn at their own pace. And when I started using technology a couple of years ago, more than I had been in the years prior, the reason was because I wanted to find ways to give each student what they needed. You know, you can give the same worksheet and it might take one student 2 minutes and the other student might take 10 minutes, and they don't necessarily both need to have that same worksheet. And for years, like I said, I was teaching the way I was taught because it worked for me. But that's not how it works. And so when I started to use technology, it was to give students an opportunity to make some choices about the types of activities that they needed to do or they thought that they needed to practice. And then it gave me the chance to kind of move around, interact with them. We went to the computer lab years ago, but now most students have devices. So when I set this up, I created these different steps for the students to kind of work through the chapter that we're on. I involved a lot of different tools, flashcards, some videos. I did a screencast to teach them how to make an infographic. So in addition to learning the content and being able to do this at their own pace, over the 2-week period of time that they had assigned it, they were also building some other technology skills and just learning how to kind of set their schedule. And it gave me a really good indicator of their progress, and I could look at the different assessments and tools that they were using and have conversations with them. And beyond that, I thought that it was a really good way to prepare them for what is potentially coming up in the future, because as we've seen, more technology is coming to classrooms. Maybe in your own schools, you have some students who are getting part of their education in an online or a hybrid program. I know in my school we have some students who could not fit foreign language into their schedule, so now they're enrolled in an online program. And so this is a good opportunity for them. And the funny thing about the picture that's there with the students on the bus is I had taken a group to a technology showcase that was about a 3-hour bus ride from our school. And about 45 minutes or so in, they were already asking, are we there yet? They were kind of bored. So I decided to play a game of Quizlet Live, which if anybody has played, and we'll talk about it later, I pulled up a random game. It was TV shows, and we played Quizlet Live on the bus. And they did the collaboration, and it's just been a great story that we've told ever since that happened. It just proved that you can learn anywhere, and using this is a great way to set up opportunities for students to learn outside of the classroom. Now, this lesson that I did was on a Google site, but it involved 8 different steps, one of which was for the students to give feedback to me. So how did the students respond? At first, they were nervous, but after that, they wanted to do more lessons. They really liked the opportunity to kind of set their schedule, to go back and review things if they needed to be able to access it. I had it on the Google sites, but since we use Edmodo, I had also placed the link on Edmodo as well. So the students didn't have any problem connecting with the content or going back and reviewing any of the material that they needed. And then I had all the information that I gathered throughout these different steps that I could use to plan each day's activities and moving forward. And some of the other tools that we will talk about are ones that were used in this lesson and are also mentioned at the very end. So one thing I did mention is Edmodo. A couple of years ago, when I was looking for a way to bring things together for my students, some of the teachers in my school were using Blackboard, not many, and I was kind of afraid of the layout of it, and I thought maybe it might be too much to take on for what I was looking for. And I found Edmodo and simply started posting daily notes, reminders, sending links, posting games on there. And it didn't take much time to see the improvements. The students liked being able to connect or to ask questions. And since that time until now, the ways that we've used it have expanded so much. And most recently, this year and the last school year, some of my classes started doing project-based learning. And we were able to connect with schools in Spain, Argentina, and Mexico by connecting with other educators in the Edmodo community and then setting up our own group. And the students have brought in all these learning opportunities that even when they were presenting their projects about a month ago, they were all saying that they couldn't believe how much more authentic of an experience that they had because of this connection, and that it really enabled them to understand in a way that books and videos or pictures could not. And I thought that was pretty powerful, that just having that one space where the students can interact, and it can be something like a big website, or it can just be one of these other tools that Rodney or I will talk about very soon. But it's just about having a place where students know that they can go if they have a question, or they can get some kind of a resource that they need. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Rodney to get us started with some of the tools that we'll be talking about tonight.
Thank you, Rochelle. So, as you look at these pictures, you notice that students are motivated somehow, some way. Center picture, bottom right side, you'll notice that there's some, what is that? Spanish going on, of course. You'll notice that the students are engaged. The important part, too, is that they have been empowered to figure out how they want to learn, as well as the resources that are there. So you also notice that this room has been transformed. Here's what we want to do. We want to make sure that you meet your students where they are and build them up. Oh, I just love this. I love that, just the idea of coming and working through this with Rochelle as we were talking about this. And we want to meet students where they are, because that is how they're going to be motivated, how they're going to be engaged and empowered, as well as transforming every single classroom. The really cool part about this, though, is that it's not just, as you see, a high school, but this will work in a middle school, in elementary school, adult situations, everywhere. Everywhere. So, let's go ahead and get started. The very first piece that we've talked about is Nearpod. I'm not sure how many of you have used Nearpod before, but you'll notice in the top right corner a screenshot of the splash screen that's going on there. The piece that I really like about Nearpod is that it is very, very flexible. You have your own library. You can explore the things that have already been made. You can definitely join a current class. If you have another teacher who's presenting something, you can join it immediately. But you can also create your own interactive and multimedia lessons, as well as look at reports that are that you would gain from every single lesson that you've shared with your students. I see that Lisa uses Nearpod almost every day. That's really cool. So with that being the case, my question would be to you is, Lisa, go ahead and share in the chat, what would be the most beneficial piece that you've seen Nearpod to be used for? You'll notice that one of the things that Nearpod does, let me go ahead and give you really quickly a little bit more background about what I do. In my school, we have one-to-one iPads, and we have Nearpod on all of our iPads. One of the teachers that uses Nearpod, she does it in a couple of different ways, but it depends upon the lessons that she wants to use. But most of the time she uses them in a teacher-directed, so that way they can walk through certain steps as far as the science is concerned, but she uses them on, she pushes out the lesson, they're on her iPad, on their iPads, and then they can follow along. Those that didn't bring their iPads, they can still get online through the Chromebook, which is really cool. So we have a great opportunity to have iPads and Chromebooks in our school. And she goes through the different lessons that are going through there to make sure that they are paced. She has found that when the students follow along with the lesson that's happening, they understand the content so much better. They ask more specific questions that are happening, and then they are more apt to go back to the resource to look at it to make sure that they followed the instructions to accomplish whatever project that they need to do. And she has absolutely loved that piece. With that being the case, we have another 8th grade teacher who's basically across the building on the other side of the hallway. She's had them come in and do pretty much the same thing with her class. And so now they're team teaching using Nearpod as one of their tools to not only increase student engagement, but also to get all of their things that, to get all their content taught to those different teachers. I see that we have a question here. Can Nearpod also be used with a traditional laptop, or is it an app? Yes, it can be used on a laptop. The website that you would go to is Nearpod, and they can log in and join a class that's immediately there. And that's one of the things that was really neat that they can do. So I need to go to my next one. Nearpod. Creating with Nearpod is really easy. Now, with that being the case, there are a lot of different platforms that are very similar to Nearpod. We've shared this one, but do know that you have others like Pear Deck and ClassFlow that you can use. We have used Nearpod together. It's pretty straightforward. You can add an activity, you can add web content, you can add different content that are there. Really sorry about that. And you can definitely add those different pieces in. So the other piece too that we have found, especially with our science group, which is who mainly uses it, is using the PhET simulations. The PhET simulations are absolutely awesome because you have an opportunity to pull them in as HTML5, and I think that's important for you to know, is that you would use the HTML5, but you can also use the college VR tours as well as different types of integrations. Another note that I would like to share with you is that they also can do a photo scavenger hunt and take pictures, and students would add using Collaborate. So there's multiple ways that you can embed a lot of different pieces that from Nearpod into your lessons and give students an opportunity to share in different ways. So with that being the case, we've already talked about this a little bit, creating lessons with teachers and students, and also getting data from the students. I think that's one of the most important pieces that we have with standards-based grading being a big push across the board in a lot of different places. You can gather this information, especially if it's not just a B or C or multiple choice. You can simply pull in the information, see if they understood it or not based upon the performance and the collaborative boards, just as I see Lisa has shared in the chat. When you have those different pieces involved, that gives you a bigger set of data points than just a score. So Nearpod is a really great opportunity for people to use inside of their lesson plans. Any questions that someone would like to put into the chat for us before I move on to our next tool?
Rodney, we just had a question come in from Susan asking how do the students see their feedback on Nearpod? So if you want to take a crack at that one, and otherwise Rochelle's been doing a really good job of answering all the other questions in the chat box. So that's our only one for right now.
Here's what I'm going to do for that question. Rochelle, how do you let the students share their feedback in Nearpod?
How do I let the students see their feedback? You can turn the feature on so that the students see it. Often the students will come up during class, well, after class or during it, and I move around and we respond to it and discuss it. But the students, whenever they do a lesson outside of class, in class when you have the live lesson, you have the data, and so the students can come over and look and see what they've gotten correct and incorrect, and some of them are marked correctly on the screen. I hide the names a lot of the time, and then they can come up and look. But also with student-paced results, whenever you enable that, then the students can see what they got correct or incorrect, things that they can work on, and then that gives them an opportunity too to come into class maybe with some questions that they come up with as a result of seeing what the results are from doing their own student-paced lesson.
Thank you, Rochelle. I think one of the important, One of the important pieces that she said, though, is it depends upon where you are when you want the students to see the feedback on the Nearpod. If they're at home, then you would go ahead and enable it to make sure that they have access to see that. Or if you're just moving around and want to engage in the conversations with the students, you would have it for yourself, and then you'd be able to share it with them either on your tablet or on your computer. So different ways that students will be able to see their feedback. So do know that if you have any other questions, please feel free to add them to the chat. You're welcome, Susan. So let's move on. Talking about EDPuzzle. Now, EDPuzzle, wow. When I saw this, I was kind of impressed by it. You can log in through Edmodo, so notice that you have an opportunity to get into EDPuzzle and to share it with, and to log into it multiple ways. But that's the way that a lot of people, have been using it. But there's a lot of accessibility and a lot of accountability with EDPuzzle. So what in the world is EDPuzzle? Here's the really cool thing. You can add lessons. You can pick a video. You can add your touch to it. You can magical touch. You can ask questions about the video. You can trim different videos. You can also make sure that students have an opportunity to know exactly what the video is about, but then you can ask questions about the video itself. You can make the videos interactive. You can add your voice. You can add questions inside the video. And all these different videos, you don't have to create them. They can come from YouTube, Khan Academy, Crash Course, or if you want to, upload your own. I have a couple of teachers that use screencasting materials, and they could definitely put them into EDPuzzle. It is free. It is free use for teachers and for students. And one of the things that is really cool is that they are Android, iOS, Chrome, and Chrome-based, and there's even a YouTube extension that you could use. So there's lots of different ideas inside of EDPuzzle. So when you go into EDPuzzle, you will have an opportunity to see what the pieces are and how you can use it. So there's a short lesson on blended space, on blend space. I thank you, Flynn. Really do appreciate it. It does work fantastic in Canvas. There is a short lesson on blend space that you can see there. You have an opportunity to see, for some reason my screen is not getting bigger, so I can see. You can record an audio track as well as you have an opportunity to ask different questions, and you can mark them correct or incorrect. So EDPuzzle gives you an opportunity to see a lot of different videos and use the videos that are popular to a lot of different people and to ask questions about them. It's a great way to also bring in social studies and then to go ahead and move over into more things like science and to make it more cross-curricular. So EDPuzzle is a really, really great tool that you can definitely use to increase accountability, as well as a simple assessment that is really good to send especially home with students and to have them do it at home if they have the opportunity or right there in class. Really quickly before I get off, Susan, I noticed that Rochelle answered your question, what is Canvas? Are there any other questions about EDPuzzle that Rochelle or I can answer?
I haven't seen any more come in through the chat box yet, Rodney, so I'll certainly flag them for you if other folks want to drop more questions in the chat box.
All right, moving right along. I'm going to go ahead and advance it, and it's Rochelle's turn.
Thank you, Rodney. Okay, so when you think about these tools, sometimes, and this is something that, and I'll say problem that I have, but I wouldn't really say that it's a real problem per se, is that when using some of these tools, you might be using it in one way, but so many of these are applicable and useful for so many other options to do. So for example, like when Rodney was talking about Nearpod, we think of it as a tool that you can use for interactive lessons, for formative assessment, but a couple of years ago I had students who were going to do a project on camping vocabulary, and so I had given them some options of how to create their project. It could have been paper, it could have been something with technology, and a student said, well, is there any way that I can put some different pictures and things in, and I recommended Nearpod. And as a matter of fact, the one image on a couple of the slides back that had a student sitting on a desk in the center of the room is one who created his project about camping using Nearpod. And then I also had a student who created his using EDPuzzle, found a video about camping, put some questions in about it and some other text, and it was just a really unique way that they came up with, and I hadn't thought of. So even though some of these tools may be traditionally thought of as like a formative assessment tool, and you might use it as a quiz or some other type of like a test that you set up, there's all kinds of possibilities with these. One of these other tools that I think is pretty phenomenal and integrates in a lot of ways with what I do is Formative. And there are many things that you can do with it. It is not specific to a grade level or content area, and over the last couple of months they have added some new features that really open up what you can do with it. So just as an example of some of the things that I put onto the screen are screenshots. So if you teach something like math, or you teach a foreign language, or any type of class, you have these options for the types of questions and activities that you can put into the formative. For example, if for me in my class I have students that need to conjugate verbs, so it's a nice space that they can use, that they can write, or they can actually type their responses. You can have them grade automatically based on a type of question, if it's a multiple choice, short answer, or you can have it where you can grade it, and when the students are logged in, because you can create classes within Formative, then you can give them that feedback right away. It's kind of small to see on the screen, but on the bottom right, the question that was posed, each square is a student's response. And if you look closely across the top, there's a bar that goes from red to orange to yellow to green. So as students are responding to the question that would be a self-grading, auto-grading response, it generates kind of like that pulse check, if you want to call it that, of what's going on in the classroom. So if you look at that question that's on the screen, the majority of the answers kind of like a little bit midway are in the green, and you have some in the yellow and then to the red. So you can get a pretty quick idea if you use this at the start of a class or at the end of the class to see what the students are thinking, if they understand the content, or if you want to have students do things like solve math problems. The top right image, you can see students are solving problems. They have a word problem, and they can use the space to respond. The question, do they have to have an email to log in? No, they can use a join code is one way to join. You can also embed it, and it integrates with Google Classroom. There's a shareable link, and actually on the next slide, when it comes up, there is a lesson that's open because you can also have the student-paced lessons. And I do have a sample one that I've created. So if you've never used Formative, then you could try this out. It's very simple. It's something just to see what is available as far as questions go. But some of the options are for adding content. You can put an image in. You might have students that you're working with writing narratives and have them describe what they see in the picture. You could have a text block and have students respond and summarize it. You can put a video in and have the students watch it and then respond to questions after that. Question choices, multiple choice, there's multiple selections for check boxes. You can have students write an essay, show your work, which is what you see in the top right, true or false, and then there's some even advanced questions that you can add into there where they can do some graphing, put things into a different sequential order, put them into categories. So there's a lot that you can do with it. A newer feature also is you can actually upload a PDF or other document and transform it. So you want the students to kind of interact with the document that you have, you can do that as well. It does not work with Canvas. I may have already said that, but I can't recall, so I didn't want to forget that. But on this next screen, you can just see some more examples in actually the content and the question type and that new feature. What you get whenever the students do complete this is like the bottom right. And you have students and all of the questions, and then it circles and gives you percentages. So there's a lot of different ways that you can interact with the results of their assessments. And students can also draw. So you can put text in, they can actually upload pictures. It's a really nice tool to use, and the students really enjoy creating this one, like I said. So if you've never used Formative, if you go to the website and you type in that join code, that would give you a chance to see what you can do with Formative. I think I answered the questions there. Does anybody else have other questions about Formative? Okay.
Rachel, I think that's all the questions we have for now.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'll move on to another one. Buncee. I'm not sure how many people have heard of Buncee, but it is a very versatile tool that really promotes student creativity. It's a lot of fun to create with. It does not matter what the age is of the student or the adult. I will tell you that I have made invitations, greeting cards, Mother's Day, Father's Day cards for my parents, signs for my classroom, you name it. There are so many things that you can do with it. But the most important thing is that students can have all of these choices and be really creative. And the image on the top left of the screen, one of my students wanted to put together something for one of these technology showcases, and she wanted to include all of the tools that she thinks they're her favorites, and that really help her to express herself and to be creative. And so she used Buncee to kind of put all of those symbols and icons together. Some of the other things that I've used in class are to have students talk about a medical situation. So you can see the pictures, they have hospital backgrounds, different animals. You can upload different pictures from your own library. It is full of thousands of images that are animations, stickers, backgrounds, templates, font types. It just continues, they continue to add more and more. And teaching with it, there is a Buncee classroom, and whenever you have that, you can put questions in for students to answer either a free response or a multiple choice. So on the screen, the image on the bottom left has exactly that. I had created kind of like a web quest for students to do, and I also created a flipped lesson where students had to work through the Buncee outside of class and do the different steps in the process, and then the end result was creating their own Buncee. So there's a lot of things that you can do with it that make it really easy and fun. And I had some students last week who created projects for the first time, and they really enjoyed just having so many options available. And I know that as a student myself, when I had to do projects, I always liked the idea, but when it came to drawing, I was very afraid to draw because I was not very artistic or creative. But having these tools, I've seen it really opens up opportunities for students to be creative. It's more personalized to them and meaningful, and you learn about them in the process. So it's a conversation starter. So when students create something like these and you look at it and you just take in what they've created, it gives you a chance to go over and talk with the students about what they've created and what they learned from it. Talking about innovative uses, when students had to create some lessons for class as part of a review assignment over the summer, one of my young students came in and said, "Oh, I made a Buncee." And I said, "Oh, well, what did you make a Buncee for?" And she said, "My verb lesson." And I was kind of taken aback by it because I just didn't expect that she would have used Buncee. And I said, "Oh." She said, "Oh, did I do it wrong?" I said, "Oh, no, I don't think you did it wrong at all." I said, "I just didn't even think of that." And so the image in the top right was a verb lesson that she created. In each slide, each picture had something with verbs, and then she led the class, asked questions, had some other images and charts, and even embedded a video. The bottom left is a lesson I created for my 8th grade STEAM class that had 5 different, it was kind of like app smashing, so they had different steps in the process. All of this was created from using everything within Buncee. So if you're worried about students like citing sources and having a safe learning environment, everything they create comes right within Buncee, so it makes it a lot easier. So you can find YouTube videos, you can post responses, you can have all kinds of links stored in there, but most importantly, you can be really creative with it. And the last part of the Buncee section is just what it would look like if you did have a class in Buncee. You see all of the Buncees the students created. When you have questions that you ask them, whether they are self-grading or if they are free response, you open that up on your teacher dashboard and you can look and see what the students responded. You can give them feedback. You can ask them to resubmit. It's very easy to add students with a join code. And in the top right, it just shows you the different types of media that you can add into it. So if you have files, you want to add stickers, animations, text boxes, you name it, there's a lot that you can add to it with Buncee. So if you're looking for something that might do a lot of different things in your classroom or even with professional development, that would be something that's very easy to start with. And I'll turn it back over to Rodney.
All right, folks. We've been going through a lot of different things, and it's already well, I'm sorry, I was about to say 4:45, 6:45 your time, 4:45 my time. We still have several things to go, but we're going to keep going ahead and moving on. We're not going to go too fast because we want to make sure that we have a lot of different pieces for you. So this next opportunity tool that I would like to share with you, I don't feel quite like an expert, which is probably good. Thank you, Kristen. Is that I'll just go ahead and share it with you. It's called Flipgrid. Flipgrid has been taking over a lot of things. So with that being the case, I do have a question for you. What is it about Flipgrid that motivates kids, that engages them, that empowers them, and that transforms them? Give you a couple of seconds. Is it the tool? Yes and no. Because with every single tool, you've got to have an application. You've got to have a context in which to use it. So for those of you that do not know Flipgrid, essentially Flipgrid excuse me, is a video discussion platform. The teacher creates a grid, they create a question or a piece, and then what you will do is you'll name it, you will set security settings, and then you would be able to share it with them. With that being the case, you add topics that are questions or themes that your students would discuss, and they can share back to your discussion, your question, in either video form, in some type of video form. It's up to 90 seconds. In some cases, other applications, it can be longer, but they're unlimited topics that you can use. The motivation comes in of you knowing who your students are, the relationships that you have built with them. You empower students because you've given them a platform in which to answer. There's a lot of students who are unable to have their picture shared somehow or some way, so they can put up a picture, some type of written form. You can also have them give a different type of a short skit in how to respond to this different, to respond to the question or the theme. So with that being the case, some people will ask, well, do students need accounts? No, you just share the grid link for easy access on Macs, on PCs, as well as Chromebooks. And anyone with a mobile device can actually use it, actually access your grid using the app itself. One of the things that I really do appreciate about it is that it has been able to, it has brought together a lot of different people across the world into one area that they are able to talk about. So it is one of really neat things, just as Rochelle has shown. In the bottom right corner, those are her students talking with students in Argentina. Because, you know, I think it's important to get across the borders. It's called a flat classroom for a reason. Now, I told you already a little bit about the next slide. I'm really sorry. I like to get ahead of myself. But again, you can use it for assessments or as a hook or warm-up or an introduction, which I think would be really cool, especially to introduce them, and then to create another grid. All right, here's a pre, and now here's a post. As far as your discussions are concerned, hey, here's how you think the reactions would be, and now here's what you would do. One of the things that I've really appreciated about Flipgrid is the customer service also. If you have questions, they are absolutely great in opportunity in sharing with you and helping you with the app or with the platform or with some ideas as far as content is concerned. The other thing that you can definitely do is if you're on social media, reach out to them, and they have lots of different questions, or ask other people. They have some really great things they'd like to share with you. They'd like to share. I was going to ask Kristen asked a question. It works on iPads. Yes, it does. Yes, it does, and I think that's very important to know. Now, also something that Kristen has mentioned is VoiceThread. VoiceThread was a really cool opportunity to share with people. That was my introduction to video and voice across oceans, actually. I shared with a really good friend of mine in Australia, and we were able to talk about our differences between Australian students as well as American students, and we shared a lot of different pictures in that way. So another tool that is very similar that I'm going to share with you, it's called Recap. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have seen Recap, but one of the things that I really did appreciate about Recap is that you have an opportunity to, again, use a video responses, and then you can create a journey, and it's an independent journey. So it's more of it's a looser platform in which students are able to pose questions and get answers back. In this case, though, students will have to create an account in order to get in. But again, you can use your Google+. You can use different LMSs will be able to attach to Recap. Clever is also another one. So Recap is a little bit more flexible as far as having students pose and answer questions, and you can create a journey. So it's a similar idea, but there's different types of features that you can use inside of Recap. All right. I'm going to, since I don't see any questions in the chat, we have about 8 more minutes to go, but you know, this has been good for us. I'm going to go ahead and move it on over to Rochelle.
Okay, so the next group, I'm sure most of you have heard of, Kahoot, and maybe not as many of Quizzes, and then the third one that will be coming up is Quizlet Live. But the main thing that I would like to say about these ones is like Kahoot has some new features. The picture that's there of the 2 students, last month I had 2 of them, those 2 who are now seniors. When I first played Kahoot, I think it was probably 4 years ago, the young man on the left was in 8th grade. We played it 4 times throughout that day. I'm surprised I survived because the energy and the intensity of which the students were playing was unlike anything I had experienced. And that day, that young man who was in 8th grade went home that night and he made a Kahoot game to use in his social studies class the next day. And he came back and he said, guess what I did? And I said, what's that then? I made this Kahoot game. And I said, wow, that's really great. And I had not thought of having students create these games because the first thing they asked me was, oh, can we do this every day? And I thought, I cannot make all of these Kahoot games. So it made me think, why not have students, instead of doing the same homework worksheet, have them choose one of these tools to create a game that will give them more authentic practice. So they can pick a set of words, vocabulary, dates, anything, and make a game that they can use in the classroom. Then you have more resources that you can share within the class and for later classes to come. But a couple of things about Kahoot. You know you can play it live in the classroom. They also this summer launched challenges that can be done similar to like a homework assignment for practice. The students would need the app on the phone, and the nice thing about this is that it's homework that basically grades itself, because as they answer the questions in the challenge, they get the feedback whether they're right or wrong, and they can move through the different rounds. They can also challenge their friends. So it's a lot of fun to do that. Another fun fact about Kahoot is that they launched the creative name generator. So if you have students who can't come up with a name quickly enough, or it's whatever the case may be, it's kind of fun whenever it generates names for them, like Rocket Panda, and you can yell those names out. So it's a lot of fun like that. Plus, the pictures show what the new dashboard looks like. So it's a little bit easier to navigate to get the game started. Quizzes is also another great tool that you can use. Again, you can play it live in the classroom. You can also assign it as practice. It's a nice feature too that recently they added on that you can integrate with Edmodo. I came across that by accident one day. I was so excited because before that you needed the join code. So it integrates easily with that. It sets it up as an assignment with Edmodo. Also does this with Google Classroom if you use Google Classroom, and also through Remind if you use the messaging app. And Quizzes changed some of their leaderboard features. You can quickly create quizzes games in very little time just by searching the games that are available. Makes it a lot easier. And then if I look at the next slide, just to show you what it looks like, you can store all of your quizzes games in collections, so it's easy to find them. If you want to search ones that are made, you can filter them. I tend to end up getting games that have probably like 55 questions. I think last year I had a game that had 90 questions. My students said, "Do you realize how many questions are in there?" I said, "No." They said, "There's 90. I said, "I was so excited. I was finding these really great questions to review." So you can play it anywhere. There were days where I could not be in school and I didn't have a substitute that spoke Spanish, and I was able to play Quizlet live from home or launch a game with quizzes for my students to interact with when I wasn't in the classroom. And with Quizlet, if you haven't ever played Quizlet live, that's a feature that you can use that works. It's a game-based feature as well, and the students get paired into teams in groups of 3 or 4, and only one student has the right answer. So the idea is to kind of look through the answers, figure them out, and then the teams kind of race against one another to see who gets them correct. If you answer incorrectly, then it bounces you back to 0. But it's a lot of fun for the students to kind of interact with each other, and you build those peer collaboration skills, and their engagement is so much higher because they're seeing the answers, and it gives you the feedback that you need. And one other feature I'll mention about the quizzes game is that you can also email the parents the results. And if you do use Google Classroom, when you assign it, it gives you the stamp and the picture of the student report instantly in the Google Classroom itself. So it really makes things kind of talk to one another very easily. So I don't want to spend any more time on those tools. Just a quick overview. I can answer questions at any time. I'm going to turn it back over to Rodney quickly for Padlet.
So one of the things that we have absolutely succumbed to is the fact that there are so many different things that are out there. I have some things, Rochelle still has some things to go, so I will simply say this about Padlet. It's awesome. Projects, discussions, lessons, portfolios, resources, I have seen them all done. And if you don't know about Padlet, you should take some good time to look at it, to go through it, to explore them, and to understand what those are. We have about less than 2 minutes left because we want to be cognizant of your time and be respectful of your time. Here's some different examples that are there that have been used with Padlet. I know, it's kind of cool that I've seen these. Rochelle has shared some of these from her classes, especially the bottom right one, what's being attributed to the rise of female presidents in Latin America and what does it mean for those countries. It's really cool to see those. I do want to share with you a couple of things that we also have available to you. Sorry we didn't get to Telegraph. You will have an opportunity to look through those. Rochelle, I'm pretty sure you won't mind if I go ahead and just talk through. We talked about PictoChart and some different options, but here's some different extra resources and ideas that we have for you, as well as categories and different tools that you can use. And then here's some assessment tools based upon what we have here. what we have found as what we've talked about today, as well as some other things that we have used in our classrooms for themselves. Do we have any questions before we go ahead and do our, we have 2 more slides that we want to go ahead and, actually 3 more that we want to share. Any other questions about tools that we have? I didn't see any in the chat. Thank you, Mr. Paz.
Yes, go ahead.
Alfonso, what will happen is this this will be sent out to you in an email within the next 48 hours to make sure that you know an archive of this, as well as what we've talked about, as well as our PowerPoint. Yes, Laura, Seesaw is amazing. Absolutely amazing. We didn't get into that one. I have so many friends that love Seesaw. So here's what we have. I will go ahead and go to mine. Rodney Turner, also known as Techie Turner. There's my email. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. There's my blog spot. You'll see a lot of different things that I share. My world of personal as far as professional is all mixed up on my blog spot, so just be aware. But you can reach out to me on any social media at Techie Turner. Rochelle.
Thank you, Rodney. And so I'm Rochelle. There is my Twitter handle and my email, and then I also have a blog site where I've written some different blogs just about things we've done in our classroom, just sharing ideas, new features. Some of the blogs actually have been written by some of the students and myself, just sharing from their perspective. About 2 years ago, I thought, you know, this is a conversation that needs to happen between not just myself and the people behind these different tools, but the companies and the people who create these products with the students, to hear what the students want to use, what helps them to learn, and different ideas that they can share. And I thought it was a good opportunity for them. So please connect with both of us. I'm happy to answer any questions at any time. Any of those ways, Twitter, email, makes no difference. Really appreciate everybody coming tonight, and I know we went through a lot of tools, and there are so many things out there, but it's really not about the tool. It's about finding one thing. And I know a couple of years ago I felt so overwhelmed the first time I went to a technology conference, but just look at your classroom and find one thing that you think might be taking up a lot of your time. Or for me, it was the disconnect, and that's what started it. And you'd be surprised, like the Padlet could be a class website. It could be a place for a student to write a blog. It could be a place to curate resources, digital portfolio. There's so many things that you can use a Padlet for beyond what maybe you might have already been using it for. So thank you again to everyone.
Thank you, Rodney and Rochelle. A huge round of applause to you both. We probably needed a whole other hour for this webinar. It was full of tips and great tools that I hadn't heard of either. So this has been wonderful, and thanks to our participants too. Lots of really great feedback and questions in the chat box. It was a really engaging hour. So thank you all. As we mentioned, we'll send you an email with this recording and the links, and so you can access all of these great tools and resources that Rodney and Rochelle shared with us. So thanks again to our presenters for sharing their expertise and their time with us this evening, and we hope to see you all on future webinars. I will throw up another slide here that has some of our upcoming events and some resources that you might be interested in. So thanks again, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day.